Today we're exploring a surprising corner of TikTok Malaysian Tahfiz schools, where children study and memorize the Quran. A new study shows these accounts portray kids in two ways, as students honing their recitation skills and in candid everyday moments of Tahfiz life. The blend mirrors child influence styles, mixing polished anchor content with authentic filler content. But here, the anchor videos carry a moral and religious message linked to the Hijrah movement's push for stricter Islamic living. It's a unique fusion of faith, influence, and digital storytelling. And for that, we are joined by Emma Baulch, the Director of Southeast Asia Research Centre for Digital Tech and Society, Monash University, Malaysia, with us to dig a little deeper. Now, welcome to the show, Emma.
Thanks, Walter. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So we're going to get straight into it because I have a few questions to ask you, and this is a very interesting topic from what I've been reading. So my question first is, how does the rise of Tahfiz schools on TikTok reshape the role of children in Malaysia's evolving Islamic influencer culture? And what does this reveal about the broader Hijrah movement digital strategies?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Walter. Our article, I co-authored this article with my colleague Ben Lowe.
Mm-hmm.
And our article is a study of TikTok accounts of Tahfiz schools. And Tahfiz schools are Islamic boarding schools where children go to learn Quranic recitation. And in the article, we talk about these TikTok accounts as kind of hybrids of child influencer accounts and also influencer accounts that have been associated with this Hijrah movement. So the Hijrah movement advocates for strict adherence to Islamic codes and practices, and has a history, developing over the 2010s, basically, of undertaking this advocacy on social media platforms, different ones. And so what we mean by a hybrid account is basically what we're saying there is that in order to understand these TikTok accounts of Tahfiz schools as a kind of social and cultural phenomenon, we need to be bringing scholarship on both Hijrah influences and child influences into the interpretive frame. And those are sort of separate bodies of scholarship, really. Separate bodies of scholarship about variants of this category called influencer.
Right.
And so when we bring both of those bodies of scholarship into the interpretive frame, we can see how these TikTok accounts of Tahfiz schools are part of the historical trajectory of the evolution of influencer culture, and also part of a historical trajectory of Islamic communication, right? So you get a kind of complex kind of historicization in that way, which is needed because when you look at the TikTok accounts of the Tahfiz schools as part of influencer culture, then you can start to think about how the specificities of the cases we present might help with our understanding of influencer culture in new ways, right?
Right.
And when you think about it as part of Islamic communication, you can see how these TikTok accounts might help us understand how Islam has been communicated and conveyed in new ways.
Yeah.
To whom and by whom, right? And these are really important questions that scholars of Islamic communication have been interested in for a while, is like how new media forms, dating back to books actually, have changed the way that Islam is communicated and also practiced, and have really shifted patterns of authority in Islam and how that's articulated, questions like this. So those questions can be applied to these TikTok accounts of Tahfiz schools as well. Yeah, so I guess when we think about the relationship between TikTok and Malaysian Islamic influencer culture. We're kind of interested in something a bit more complex than just a one-way relationship between TikTok and something that's already there in the context, right? So it's not so much about how TikTok shapes Islam in Malaysia, but how the uptake of TikTok is sort of happening in a broader context.
Right.
And that broader context is, for example, the expanded access to an engagement with social media platforms among people beyond the urban middle classes. So this is what we see as the significance of Tough Is Talk, is that we're talking about new kinds of influencers, addressing new kinds of publics who are not from the urban middle classes, who have usually been, the people who are the influencers are middle class people from cities, and they're addressing middle class people from cities. What you see with these Tough Is TikTok accounts is people who are not from cities and who are not from the middle classes, addressing people, from those different demographics as well. So that's the kind of shifts that we're interested in looking at. And I guess there are questions about how TikTok enables those new kinds of address as well.
Let's stay on topic of the Tough Is talk creators, TikTok creators, blend and how they blend elements of child influencer, let's say calibrated amateurism, with the pop culture aligned strategies of the Hijra influencers. And what does the hybrid performance reveal about the evolving nature of Islamic digital micro celebrities?
Yeah, I think the value of the scholarship on micro celebrity influencer culture and child influencers to this particular case is that there are observed patterns within those cultures that also happen to apply to the accounts that we studied, right? And so those patterns are, I guess, firstly, one of the early things that was noticed about influencers is that it's a form of celebrity or micro-celebrity. So micro-celebrity is, it entails working to garner attention among niche audiences, right? Usually involving online spaces, And then influencers are defined by their efforts to monetize that attention by selling something, either a product or a brand. And so one of the early things that was noticed about micro celebrities is that, unlike sort of traditional celebrities, they don't try and be special or extraordinary. They sort of tend to want to be ordinary and everyday, and they try to reach out to their followers and pretend they're friends with them, or, that's called parasocial relationships. And so that's, it's a kind of a new form of celebrity in a way that's articulated in new ways. And then I think Crystal Abedin's work on child influencers, she's noticed how there tends to be this sort of toing and froing between, we might say, backstage, front stage performances, but she calls it anchor and filler. So on the one hand, you have these anchor videos where the children, they're highly produced and the children are doing these sort of well-honed skills and they're very rehearsed. They might be singing or dancing and they're quite glossy and well-produced. And then on the other hand, in the same accounts, you might have, sort of videos of which are more like that kind of blooper style where they're kind of spontaneously, every day behind the scenes, this kind of thing. And that that somehow drives engagement, that toing and froing between that anchor and filler. So she calls the spontaneous performances filler content and the more highly produced ones anchor content. So we noticed those as well, that kind of pattern, which suggests that the Tough Is TikTok accounts are drawing on a sort of influencer culture, right? That's not just related to Islamic communication.
Right.
it's related to influence, the influencer phenomenon that maybe is filtering through TikTok and other social media platforms. And so it's important to engage with that scholarship in order to understand, the patterns and the through lines that are discernible in the Tahfiz accounts and how they might be similar to other kinds of influencer accounts. The only difference was that our accounts that we looked at weren't attached to particular people, but they were attached to particular schools, right? And so we saw that there was like this two categories of content that we used Abedin's conceptualization of anchor and filler content to categorize them. And on the one hand, there were these videos which were also highly produced of kids like doing these beautiful Quranic recitations. And on the other hand, there were these filler content where they were sort of spontaneously commenting on their life in the boarding school and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So there was that kind of calibrated amateurism evident in the accounts that we looked at as well. And and so since we'd engaged with that scholarship, we could discern that. I think as I was saying before, it's important to acknowledge the shaping force of the platform and the different kinds of platform cultures on the context, but we need to really understand the complexities of what's going on in the context in order to fully understand the significance of the phenomenon, I think.
Okay. That's quite interesting. Now, let's talk about this. When Quran recitation anchor videos of children do go viral, they sort of seem to, and they drive donations. Where is the line between showcasing like a religious achievement and commodifying a child's spiritual journey for monetization? To me, there seems to be a difference. Am I wrong to say that?
Yeah, so there's an assumed distinction in your question, which is a distinction between religious piety and commodification, and distinction between voicing. Actually, there's two distinctions: one between religious piety and commodification, and also a distinction between authentic voice and commodification. So I think the first one is, just as a disclaimer, I'm not a scholar of Islam. I'm a scholar of popular culture and everyday life. But I think it's fair to say that Islam has always been bound up with questions of economic advancement, and particularly in the political economy of Malaysia, the links between economic advancement and being a Muslim are very, very close. So that line has not, I don't think there's a very strong distinction or a difference or separation between what it means to be religiously pious and what it means to gain economic advantage, right? I think that those things are very, very bound up with economic empowerment is very bound up with what it means to be a Muslim in a lot of contexts, particularly Malaysia. So, and so then the other thing is social media an avenue or a stage or a platform where that's available for us to, participate in public sphere or a stage for public voice or popular voice. This is the way we used to think about social media, that it was going to be, a place where we could come together and engage with one another, free of the sort of shackles of corporate media or whatever.
Mm.
But now we tend to understand social media as corporate media.
Right, exactly.
And yeah, as a sort of advertising platform, and platforms that are ultimately bound up with the work of commodification. So yes, it commodifies the children, but so does any engagement on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the dividing line is never going to be there. Dividing line in Islam also is already blurred.
I see, I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
And before I let you go, I have one more question for you, which is why do minimally edited videos showing strict disciplinary practices and everyday life in Tafi's schools generate more engagement? I mean, we talked about that polished routine versus the blooper style, uh, you know, I guess they would say it's behind the scenes, but in real fact, it's not really behind the scenes. It's behind the scenes that's in front of the scene kind of thing in their
Mm.
polished religious performances and what this reveals about audiences, nostalgia, maybe values and expectations of Islamic education.
Yeah, so in our study, we found that the filler content or the spontaneous content, behind the scenes type content, included sort of fond renderings of corporal punishment, which people enthusiastically engaged with. And so you're asking, why is that?
Hmm.
Yeah, we don't know why, but we can sort of link it to broader developments, I guess, in the Malaysian context. I think
Hmm.
we can draw parallels and, connecting lines, maybe connections, which is in, sorry, I've forgotten the date. I think 2022 was the last election. In the
Hmm.
2022 election, um, the voting age was lowered to 18.
Hmm.
And this was expected to deliver wins for the progressive parties, but in fact, it delivered wins for the Conservative Islamic Party.
Okay.
Yeah, so against the progressive parties, actually. So um, the progressive urban middle class people, didn't didn't um, didn't collect the successes they expected to
Right.
out of this change in the law. And that kind of those wins for the Conservative Islamic Party came on the back of very um, um, successful campaigning on TikTok,
Hmm.
actually. Yeah. And so um, it's relevant because uh, the wins for the Conservative Islamic Party are linked to the lowering of the voting age. And what we see on the TikTok accounts in the Tahfiz schools are young people enthusiastically engaging with these nostalgic renderings of corporal punishment, right? So
Hmm.
there you can see a connection there. Now,
Hmm.
whether their connection, I mean, that's hypothetical in a way because we haven't studied it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I can answer that question, I guess, is that these enthusiastic engagements come in the context of young people's support in the last election for the Conservative Islamic Party.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
There's so many more questions I wish I could ask you, but we have run out of time today. But there is always a possibility of having you back on. So, are there any sort of works that you would like to promote or any future studies that you're currently working on?
Yeah, I'd just like to um, yeah, draw attention to some of the sort of younger scholars, I guess, who are publishing great work on influences um, and micro celebrity culture in Southeast Asia. In Indonesia, there's a couple of young scholars working out of Australia who write on Indonesia. Anissa Betta, who's connected to the University of Melbourne. You
Hmm.
should look at her work if you're interested in reading more. Eva Nisa, who's connected to the ANU, writes about this as well. So yeah, again, have a look at her work if you're interested.
Thank you very much for that. And I guess I have to say also thank you to our listeners today. If you have any questions or queries, you can also leave them in the comment section. But once again, thank you for listening to the IERLab podcast. I'd like to thank our guest again today, Emma Baulch, the director of Southeast Asia Research Center for Digital Tech and Society in Monash University, Malaysia. Thank you so much again, Emma.
My pleasure.
Yes, and until next time, this has been Walter Lee. You may click on your next adventure now.